Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us at our What Matters 2024 presentation, where we will share some of the trends that matters most to consumers and influence them the most this year. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Annery, and I am the Business Director for the South African office. And with me, we also have Madly, our Senior Research Team Director, also for the South African office, as well as Alex, who is Huminate's foresight, trends, and semiotics expert within the Space Doctors part of the business. So, we are, of course, incredibly excited to take you through the insights of what matters to South Africans. But first, three little bits of housekeeping rules before we start. So in the bottom right corner is a little chat function. So feel free to tell us how you are feeling today through text and emojis. So don't forget those hearts. There's also a tab to raise a couple of questions, respond, or even upvote another person's questions using the arrow at the left-hand side. And of course, we will address all your questions at the end of the session. So we do have time for that. And good news, we are recording. So you will receive this after the session. So please feel free to sit back, relax, enjoy your coffee while watching the magic. So I do think it's only fitting to start off with a little introduction to us, Huminate. So we are the offspring of 10 like-minded agencies joining forces to create a new space in our industry and drive positive change. Together, we are truly a global agency, being close to clients all over the world and delivering an integrated set of solutions to help clients take a more human perspective on business. Okay, so let's get right to it. And to get us all in the right mindset, I'm going to start off with a couple of very jarring numbers. So, 90% of South Africans are seriously worried about the future. And this exact same number feel that brands do need to take some type of responsibility. But in the same breath, we see that 61% of South Africans are optimistic, saying that we can reverse the damage that we've actually done. So, but with that said, an overwhelming majority say that focusing on sustainability is simply no longer enough. And we need to go beyond sustaining the planet and into reversing the actual damage that we've done. So, there's this kind of collective desire for change, for regeneration, as opposed to just focusing on sustainability. How can we move from less harm to more good? Because while we can't really alter the past, we can indeed shape the future. And with many people, organizations, and brands that want to make that positive change, they really don't often know where to start or what they actually need to do. So the good news is this report maps out exactly different ways in which you can start with that. We shed light on underlying frictions and needs as well as expectations towards brands, what people say versus what they do, because there is a difference, and the role brands can play in closing that gap. So, this is not another trends report. It really isn't. It is a story about what matters. So, I'm going to hand over to Alex now, who will take us through the mechanics of how we created the story about what matters.
Great. Thank you so much, Anna-Marie. So yes, we are Space Doctors, the cultural and creative agency within Human8. My name's Alex. I'm a project director within the business, but I was also a lead on this report, which is honestly such a treat because it's such an area of passion for me personally, regeneration. And moving towards a positive future for people and for the planet. And as someone who works a lot in looking at the future, that's kind of what we do. This report gave me a lot of hope. um, So you can see here our kind of previous reports from 2020. And, we looked at different topics from things like pandemic attitudes to rebound and rebalance in 2022. And when we started to think about which topic to focus on this year, something that we noted there was that in so many of our projects and previous reports, there was that real interest towards change in general, but change towards a better future for people and for the planet. So this is what we've really focused on, and it's why we focused on this theme of sort of positive transformation. And, we know that we can present these really inspiring futures and trends and shifts, but the question that we often get from clients is kind of, okay, but how do I get there? So this report really explores the types of change that are taking place, and hopefully will give you some kind of tangible inspiration on the how and not just the kind of what or why. So if we take a look at the method, this year, differently as well, we kind of started with a semiotic and cultural analysis using our network of in-market semioticians who are on the ground all over the world, and can get us really into the nuance of culture. And we'll talk a little bit more about semiotics in a moment. But we also used cultural AI, which we actually call collaborative intelligence. And that's really about cultural analysis that we then feed into kind of data tools that will then scrape from kind of news sites, social media, blogs, and we can see kind of how language and visuals are changing. And we also spoke to our Illume network, who, if you're not familiar with them, are a global network of cultural change makers. They're people who are kind of leading edge. They're trying to disrupt or make a change in the category usually, and they kind of exist on the edges of culture, and we speak to them to help stretch us and bring us there. And they normally have a really strong point of view, which is great. And from that, we came up with our map and codes, which we'll kind of go into a bit more detail on shortly. But that was kind of the cultural foundation that was then fed into a community and a quant study. So it's a really nice piece where we kind of partnered with Humanate using the best of our capabilities together. So when kind of working with kind of teams within Humanate outside of Space Doctors, it's really about getting close to people, right? With, communities and surveys and really understanding what matters to people today. Whereas for Space Doctors, we look through the lens of culture, how culture is changing, and the impact that will have on the future. So it's things that consumers wouldn't necessarily be able to tell you yet. They might not know how those ideas got into their heads, but we use culture to tell you how it got there. So we use methods like semiotics to look at cultural meaning, and then apply that to think about future strategies. So if you've never worked with semiotics before, you'll have a good understanding by the end of this report, hopefully. And we can give you a bit more detail than what you might have already seen in the download. So that's great. If you have any questions throughout as well, just pop them in the chat and we can try and answer those. So let's get into our map of positive transformation. And this is the starting point. This is the bare bones of the map. And we always start with the axes, which draw across tensions across the landscape that we're sort of uncovering as we start to do our analysis. So we saw this tension between change that is focused versus expansive, and change that is mediated versus change that is organic. So let's look at those axes in a little bit more detail. And it can feel a little complicated if you've never used a semiotic map before, but again, bear with me and hopefully it'll kind of all come together. And if you have questions, we can answer them throughout or discuss at the end. So on the vertical axis, we have mediated change, which is about change that is shaped and direct. So we're approaching challenges with awareness of and often influence over our systems. And this is really about applying deep knowledge and utilizing kind of expertise. Whereas on the bottom, we have organic change, which is dynamic and amorphous. So this type of change, it might, change direction as it's growing and as it's building. And it's really fed by sort of lived experience. And that's what sustains it and allows it to flourish. Whereas on the horizontal axis, we have focus, where positive change is approached with precision and often that kind of deep technical understanding. So this is about sort of spotlighting problems, looking at those barriers to change, putting all our resources there to sort of unlock those pathways forwards. Whereas on the expansive side, we're approaching change that is more kind of about radical philosophies, broad imagination. We're looking at reframing the narrative completely and pursuing sort of a whole new way of being. And those tensions bring us to our 4 dimensions of positive change. So we can look at how those tensions sort of intersect, and that's what brings us to these sort of, you could think about them as themes. So between mediated and expand, we have courageous vision. And in this space, we're looking at bold ideas and visions that are revolutionizing the way that we think. Between expand and organic, we have rethink and thrive. And in this space, we're challenging conventional paths and exploring kind of alternative forms of organization. Between organic and focus, we have empowered minds. So here we're enabling and empowering everyday people to become change makers. And finally, between focus and mediated, we have surgical solutions. And this is about looking for precise and focused actions that can kind of unlock that exponential impact. So it's important to remember in that space that this isn't about kind of incremental, doing one small thing and then ticking it off the list, but really focusing on spaces that will unlock further change down the line. And from those quadrants, we look at basically how they might be showing up differently in culture. There's different sort of manifestations of each of those themes. So we come to our codes, which are kind of sub-themes within the themes, and we can think about them as clusters of meaning, and we just call them codes, cultural codes. So here you can see how they sit across the map. And these are all the different ways that we saw positive transformation showing up globally. And what you might want to think about as we talk through them is, you know, which of these are more relevant to me now, which might be more relevant in the future, which do I simply need to just be aware of, and which codes are some of my competitors playing into, for example. And we'll be focusing on 4 of these today. But you can see, 3 of these, sorry, and we'll see those in a bit more detail in the report. So you can always download that afterwards if it's helpful.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Alex. As you will see from the content today, as Anri mentioned up front, there is this universal drive for change, but it's a mind shift. We are going from doing less harm to doing a little bit better to actually doing real good. As Alex mentioned, it can be a little bit tricky, but here's the good news. Change can start anywhere. It can be big or it can be small. Today is not about rules. Today's presentation is hopefully about inspiration. It's about looking at the needs and the frictions that calls for change and then embracing those. As some of our US colleagues would say, it's about falling in love with the problem. Much of what I'm presenting to you this morning is open for interpretation, and that is the beauty of it. How do you reimagine your brand's role? How do you want to play as a change maker? As Alex said, we are presenting 3 of the mainstream codes in South Africa today. But if you are interested in one of the transformation codes that we're not presenting, please refer back to the full report, as all 8 of them will be covered in there. All right, let's kick off. So within the dimension of courageous vision, as Alex has explained, it's sitting sort of in this ideation visionary space. And underneath that, we have the first of our transformation codes called Manifesting Manifestos. And this transformation code is all about leadership-driven change. The research again highlighted the need for leaders. Leaders inspire. Leaders affect change. Leaders make a difference. As Jonathan Michael Bowman states, leaders by definition are change makers. When you are called to lead, you are called to advance, you are called to move forward, to improve a situation. And this extends to us as brands and corporates. Within 2024, however, change is not just from a brand perspective or product perspective. And we actually see that it's also about the human, the Oprah Winfrey or the Bill Gates behind the brand who creates impact. The impact can definitely be massive. It can be, for a lack of a better word, disruptive. But it can also be more subtle, evolutionary rather than revolutionary. It can be incremental. I think the important thing for all all of us as brands is to embrace this with authenticity. So what works for my brand? What aligns with what it is that we offer and what we stand for? So I'm very aware that the next chart is very full. Please allow me 1 second to explain. We have on the chart, we start off by asking respondents as to whether or not a change code resonates with them. Do they identify with the code? And then we go into their behavior and we look at whether or not they're acting on it. And that then creates this say-do gap that we have in the middle. We then also at the top of the chart plot it on a quadrant plot for you, and you can see how the code manifests in South Africa, and you can actually compare the South African response to how the rest of the markets that we did the research in actually responded to it. And then finally, on the right-hand side of the screen, you will see that we also ask consumers as to whether or not they think a change code fits with a specific sector, more than one or just one. It doesn't really matter. And by looking at manifesting manifestos, you can see that almost 9 in 10 South Africans actually identify with this code. And with almost 2/3 of us already acting upon it, that say-do gap is relatively small. So it's definitely a mainstream code for South Africans. And that means that probably it will continue to be relevant in the future, and there is an opportunity for brands to lead by example. However, leadership, bold leadership, like we find in manifesting manifestos, does not have to be forceful. I think some of our most inspirational leaders have led with empathy and with kindness. A Gandhi, for example. And our first example this morning within manifesting manifestos is a gentle one. It's an example from within the fashion industry where you would have seen that 1/3 of us thought that this code actually works quite well within the fashion industry. So Patrick Bongoy actually creates beautiful art from waste material. And he summed it up by saying, we've been given this world to shape and to protect. But in the end, we created a monster. However, what is so good from his example is that it doesn't end there for him. Patrick actually falls in love with the problem. He embraces the friction, and he then creates his leadership manifesto, and he states, there are possibilities and solutions. All it takes is effort, energy, and this collective will for change. So it's really quite positive to see how he reacts to it. Another one of the greatest leaders of all time said that it always seems impossible until it's done. And our next example from the financial services industry has a bold, quite possibly impossible vision.
Question was then asked, but why don't we form our own bank in South Africa? 70 rand was raised and put on the table out of our pocket.
Who starts a bank with 70 rands?
When every other bank was started, it was just a business opportunity. For African Bank, the founders saw an opportunity to uplift the lives of its people. They opened their doors in 1975. This was a bank that believed in you. Every product gave you permission to create the life you deserve. Every loan helped you send your children to school and to start businesses. Every savings account brought you closer to a brighter future. If African Bank had the audacity to start a bank with only 70 rands, what's stopping you from being audacious? But it's not about the 70 rands. To achieve anything of significance, you must have indestructible belief. If those around you don't believe in you, make the rest of the world believe in you. Don't just live for the sake of living. Be audacious. Be relentless. Go after what you believe in. And when it comes to banking, don't just bank for the sake of banking. Have the audacity to join the bank that believes in you. African Bank. Audacity to believe.
Be audacious. What a tremendous sentiment if you're writing your manifesto. So this example from African Bank is one of the older examples that we have for you today, but it's still completely relevant. And what we saw here was that they've taken the leadership of a few and then embraced and harnessed it by the brand that they helped to build. In the following example, we see a brand leading in a completely different manner. It's not about leadership from an individual or a few individuals, it's the brand leading. And in this example, you will see how it stands up for a consumer segment who goes largely ignored in their own category. And it takes courage to go against the grain, so to speak. And albeit a little bit tongue in the cheek, SAB has fun in creating an emotional engagement or driving relevance amongst the lesser spotted older male beer drinker.
Hi guys, today I'm going to show you how to make a tree house for your kids. Maybe get back into your wife's good books. What you're going to need is a drill, 50 pieces of tree. Have they skipped? This is not about freaking tree houses. We just want to make sure the youngsters aren't listening. And our message falls on the ears of a man who has the patience to turn a tree into a house. The kind of man who's been around long enough to appreciate the difference between a Hansa Pilsner and all those other new age beers. Because you don't need your beer to come with merch or to double up as an NFT, and you definitely don't need it hashtag trending on Beer Talk. All you need is for your beer to taste f***ing perfect. Damn, that really does. So to all the men out there who only say lit when talking about a bride, grab an ice-cold Hansa Pilsner and sip on 150 years of brewing excellence. Can we make it any clearer? Nope.
I think my favorite part is to all the men who only says lit in relation to a braai. Guys, I love my job. Can you tell? If we think about leadership and change, it is inevitable that brands would want to embrace some of the Madiba magic. And in our next example, Checkers 6060 subtly plays on the emotive benefit of their delivery service, and they beautifully link it back. This is our last example under Manifesting Manifestos.
In honor of Nelson Mandela's many years of sacrifice for our nation, Checkers 6060 is making 67 deliveries to charities in the way that we do it in 60 minutes.
Moving on to our next dimension, and as Alex explained, it falls on the left-hand side, surgical solutions within that focused mediated space. And our transformation code within this dimension is inventive applications. So much of what we cover in the 2024 report is about regeneration. It's about thinking creatively and innovatively, not only about problems and challenges, but also still very much about resources. And what inventive application does, it pushes us to consider those resources at our disposal that we may no longer use or want. It extends to infrastructure and systems and even to technology. From the next chart, you will see that for the vast majority of South Africans, 9 in 10 of us identify with repurposing and thinking about repurposing in a different manner. However, with almost a third of us not yet acting on something where we see there's value in, there's a definite opportunity for brands to activate within this space. And our first two examples that we're going to show you comes from 2 entirely different sectors. First off, on the left-hand side, Maltento is a Cape Town team of engineers and scientists. And as strange as this may sound, they breed black soldier flies, which then these black soldier flies then they create proteins from agri-waste, and from the proteins they create, among other things, pet food. So really rethinking tiny creatures. And then on the right-hand side, not tiny creatures, we've got Local Studio. Local Studio is a Joburg-based architectural practice, and they reimagine dormant structures within our cities. Through adaptive reuse, Local Studio creates, for example, from hospitals, they create museums. From silos, they create corporate offices. They even create student housing from commercial spaces. So we've always been inventive. We create sleeping bags from billboards for the homeless. From last year's beautiful SAB example, where we create bread from used grains. But inventive applications, it does not always have to be a physical reincarnation of a product. In our next example, which is within the tourism sector, which is obviously a key sector for us in South Africa, WWF actually takes our natural resources, our beautiful landscapes, and they deliver an impactful message around climate change. So not physical, conceptual. And then our last example within inventive applications. And here we do what we do best when we are under pressure and we are trying to cope. We laugh at ourselves. This example is from the energy and utility sector, where 40% of South Africans actually thought that inventive applications would be a good fit for this sector. And it's a relatively small brand that tackles the challenges and the problems within the alternative energy space. Remember, inventive applications is about utilization within the current systems or the current frameworks and status quo.
Are you the electrician?
No, I'm an electrician. Shady Sean's the name. Installing semi-reliable solar is the game.
I need power now.
Oh, I will give it to you, Danny.
Ah! You look at this high up here. What you got here is you got your DB box right next to your pub box.
This is a solar panel for ants and for ants like you.
This is called the Danger system. That's why I installed it for you. It's very safe. Yay!
I don't think you have a north up here, Danny.
Should I cut the red wire or the blue wire? I would really Google it. I don't know which to cut.
What? Are you cheating on me with a Harold's trusted installer?
Don't let a Shady Sean steal your sunshine. Rather use one of Harold's trusted installers.
So, a pretty Danny like you have to have a pretty daughter. You know, I put the cute in electrocute.
We can only hope that load shedding is one of those systems that's obsolete one of these days. Our next dimension is empowered minds. And as Alex explained early on, this is all about the change maker, and Director's Chair is about the everyday change maker. It is about power to the other people. From the research, we saw that there was an underlying disconnect between those currently in the driving seat and those with a different reality, often because of not having access to the same privileges. But Director's Chair calls on everyday change makers who may not necessarily have the platform or the voice or the resources to lead us in change. So imagine as brands that we can facilitate this. It could be some of your customers, it could be your employees, an entirely different segment like we saw from the Hansa example earlier this morning, so long as it's from their perspective. The last three examples that we're going to show to you today hopefully illustrates how brands can tackle the same transformation code, but from different angles, all just to make positive change. So Director's Chair is a mainstream code. It's a mainstream trend for South Africa. And this makes sense, right? That we would be sensitive towards marginalized opinion. And another thing that we can see from this chart is also that rather than just having one or two dominant sectors or industries that consumers felt had a synergy with the code, it was quite a broad application. South Africans believe that this can go quite broadly, many different sectors. Our first example within Director's Chair this morning is from the automotive industry. And in this example, Hyundai tackles an age-old yet somehow always current topic of gender inequality, but they do it through the perspective of children, and they sensitively create awareness.
You have absolutely nothing to worry about. I think you and your team did excellent today. You definitely delivered.
What did you buy?
Nice. Give me 30 minutes and dinner will be ready. Why haven't you washed up for dinner yet?
Daddy didn't put the basket.
All right, come, wash up time. Honey, please take the pot off the stove.
Okay, Mommy, I'll be back.
Honey, did you check the... Do we have homework?
Yes, I have a book you have to read me.
Give me 10 minutes, I'll finish eating and then...
Oh, honey, I have an 8:10 meeting tomorrow. Can you iron my shirt for me, please? Sweetie pie, I thought you'd been busy.
Mommy's very tired. She's always busy. So I made her this gift. Do you think she'll like it? Daddy, can we give Mommy time too?
Kanyisa nindlela wemadoda.
Our next example is also an extremely powerful one. And you will see that Nedbank educates and ultimately empowers South Africans by putting a crucial topic in the spotlight.
Very nice. Thank you.
Hello.
Grace?
How are you?
My name is Max. I'm here to save you.
I'm Frank.
Hello,
How can
Frank.
I help you? What would you like?
I'm all right, how are you?
There's the menu. What would you like to drink?
Can I please have sparkling water? And what are you having?
Can I please get an orange juice, please?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Lemon chicken. Lemon chicken. Lemon chicken. Kebab. Okay. May or may not want the salad, but they said put it there anyways.
No.
Ah. No. I'm not going to.
Ingat sa ingat bata-bata la.
Now we've got thank you. 3.
Sorry.
Can I leave it
Sorry,
like that?
Mr. Frank.
Sorry?
Sorry, Mr. Frank.
No problem. Can I have a serviette, please? A serviette?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is everything okay here? Don't you think Frank is too old to be working here?
We've been waiting a while.
I'm so sorry. We'll sort it out.
Just the bill, please. Just the bill. Yes. Thank you. Check, please. Thank you.
90% of South Africans can't afford to retire.
Be part of the 10% that can.
The message on the bill was an eye-opener. And have you started saving?
No. We didn't even think we would reach that age.
I think today was a bit of a reality check.
Sure. From these examples, I hope that you can see that the way in which these codes are activated, they can be unique. They don't have to be textbook by putting a marginalized group on a topic. As Nedbank has done here, they create awareness by creatively putting the retired or the non-retired in this instance center stage. I would like to read you a quote by one of the South African online community members who said, "We all know the saying, walk a mile in someone's shoes. Until you feel what that other person goes through, you won't know what their situation is or how to overcome it. So, who better to handle it than the people suffering from it?" Our final ad goes in an entirely different direction and a different perspective. So typically rugby is often about braai and beer. And in this ad, they put a completely different spin on it by putting friends, family, and everyday fans up front. What is more, and one of the reasons that we really wanted to include it for you today, is that the ad goes completely outside of the brand's core offering. And they spent what must have been a small fortune on delivering a not brand message, but a message that at that point in time mattered to South Africans. And that is a different kind of boldness and a different kind of perspective.
Every time this country gets behind us, the boys step up to be there for them.
Just different people coming together, standing up for the same thing, singing the same thing. It's just unbelievable.
They should know that they have a big support back home. I know that when they run out, they're running out for the entire country.
South African tenacity, we can do anything we put our mind to. To our men in green and gold, we back you, we support you. Just bring it home again.
Nkosi sikeleli Afrika Maluphakamisu phondo lwayo Israeli thandazo lethu Nkosi sikeleli shall stand.
Apologies for the sound quality there. Gremlins in the system, it seems, this morning. We hope that you all got some inspiration and saw that really change can start anywhere. Can be audacious, but it also can whisper. So long as it rings true for the brand. So here's the challenge. Let's fall in love with that problem and together do good. Thank you, Henri.
Thanks, Madeleine. Sure. Yeah, I don't know if it's appropriate to cry in webinars, but here we are. Thanks for that. Yeah, so our 2024 report brings a story on what matters to people, a guide to be more relevant and more meaningful in the regeneration space, with inspiration on different pathways forward. So this is just a starting point. The real challenge now lies in acting upon what matters for you specifically. And we're, of course, here to help you create the future that people really want to live in. So there are many ways in which this report can connect to take action to the steps that you need to take. One key way in which this can be done is via inside communities, engaging the right people for the right task to understand what they want from your brand now and in the future. People are changing, brands are evolving, and as a result of the fast-paced world we live in, people expect more from brands and from companies. So it's essential for brands to keep up with rising expectations. And just as we used our proprietary inside community, the Square, to uncover what matters to consumers in 2024, so too can you use this as a jumping off point to better understand what consumers want to see from you specifically. So before we move over to the Q&A, I just wanted to let you all know that we do have a quick feedback survey that you can fill out if you do want to share your thoughts on this webinar, which we'd of course really appreciate. And over and above that, you can also indicate whether you're interested in your own in-company presentation. So that's tailored to your brand and your sector. So yeah, whether it's financial services, beauty, FMCG, retail, entertainment, consumer healthcare, QSR, fast food or automotive or anything else, we'd be very happy to do an in-company tailored presentation for you and your team. So you can access the survey by scanning the QR code on the screen. I believe it's going to be posted in the chats as well. And feel free to do it now if you want to have it handy after the session, but you will also receive it in that follow-up email. The survey is, of course, anonymous, but please do share your email address if you want us to do an in-company presentation. So yeah, then that's it for today. We really hope you enjoyed the ride and got some inspiration at least to drive positive change for your brand as well as your audiences, and to make it work, do what matters on that journey. And if you have any other questions, please reach out to us. We'd be very, very happy to help out and answer anything that you might have. And once again, thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully we'll speak again soon. Have a good day.